The sound of plastic trays crashing onto linoleum echoed through Westbrook Academy's sprawling cafeteria. Madison Harper felt her spine slam against the cold brick wall, shoulder blades grinding into the painted concrete as Preston Kane's massive hand wrapped around her collar. At 6'2" and 220 pounds of state championship wrestler muscle, he lifted her clean off the ground like she weighed nothing at all.
Scholarship trash!
Preston's breath reeked of cigarettes and energy drinks as he snarled inches from her face. Behind him, 5 members of the Westbrook Wolves formed a semicircle, blocking every possible escape route. 500 students packed into the cafeteria fell silent, forks frozen halfway to mouths, conversations dying mid-sentence. No one dared move. No one dared breathe. This was Preston Kane's kingdom, and in kingdoms, executions were public affairs. Before we dive deeper into what happens next, I want to take just a moment to say thank you for being here. Stories like Madison's need to be heard, and you make that possible. If this resonates with you or reminds you of struggles you've faced, please consider leaving a comment below. Your experiences create a community where no one feels alone. And if you want to see more content exposing injustice and celebrating courage, that subscribe button helps us reach others who need to hear these stories. Now, let's return to that cafeteria, where everything's about to change. Madison didn't panic like Preston's previous victims. She didn't cry or beg or promise to pay. Instead, her lips moved silently, counting down from 10, 9, 8, 7. Her dark eyes locked onto Preston's with an intensity that made something flicker in his expression. Just the slightest hesitation, like a predator suddenly unsure if it had cornered prey or another predator. In exactly 7 minutes, this entire gang would be on their knees before the FBI. But first, she needed them to confess their crimes on camera. Madison Harper looked like exactly what her scholarship file said she was. 17 years old, 5'4", 110 pounds soaking wet. Her mother worked double shifts cleaning offices downtown, barely scraping together rent for their studio apartment. The $65,000 annual tuition at Westbrook Academy might as well have been $6 million. She owned 3 uniforms, rotated carefully through the week, pressed each night with an iron older than she was. The perfect victim profile for the Westbrook Wolves. What that file didn't mention was the call she'd received 2 years ago. After witnessing a drug deal at her previous school and having the courage to report it, the FBI had approached her with an unusual proposition. They were piloting a new program, embedding trained assets in schools where traditional law enforcement had failed to penetrate. Madison had spent 6 months in intensive training, learning surveillance techniques, self-defense, and most importantly, how to build airtight legal cases that would stick in federal court. Preston Kane ruled Westbrook Academy through a simple business model his father had perfected on the streets before becoming police chief. Every student paid protection fees, sliding scale based on perceived wealth. $50 a week for the middle-class kids, $200 for the wealthy ones. Refuse to pay, and accidents happened. Lockers vandalized, homework destroyed, bones broken in ways that looked accidental. The smart ones paid. The stubborn ones transferred. The truly unfortunate ones ended up in the hospital with injuries that somehow never resulted in charges being filed. 3 weeks, Harper. Preston released her collar, letting her feet touch the ground while he flexed his knuckles. The sound of cracking joints echoed in the silence. 3 weeks I've been patient. 3 warnings. 3 chances. My old man might be police chief, but even he can't protect stupid. Madison smoothed down her uniform blazer with steady hands, her voice carrying clearly across the silent cafeteria. "I already told you, I don't pay extortion money." Someone gasped. Using the legal term was like dropping a match in a puddle of gasoline. Preston's crew exchanged glances. Derek Mills, the gang's enforcer, stepped forward with his phone already recording. Ryan Chen pulled out a water bottle, shaking it suggestively. They'd done this before, many times. The humiliation ritual was practiced, refined, designed to break spirits and ensure compliance. Wrong answer. Preston's neck muscles bulged as he rolled his shoulders. Today, you become an example. Everyone needs to remember what happens when you disrespect the wolves. In the crowd of watching students, Sophia Chen noticed something others missed. She'd taken 3 years of martial arts before her parents could no longer afford lessons, and she recognized the subtle shift in Madison's stance. Weight distributed evenly, knees slightly bent, hands loose at her sides in a position that looked relaxed, but allowed for explosive movement. That wasn't the stance of a scared teenager. That was the ready position of someone trained in Aikido. Derek lunged first from the left, counting on his basketball player's speed and reach advantage. Madison pivoted on her back foot, minimal movement that let Derek's momentum carry him past her and straight into a recycling bin. The crash sent empty cans rolling across the floor. Ryan tried to capitalize on the distraction, attacking from behind with the kind of cowardly move the Wolves were famous for. Madison dropped low, swept his legs with a circular motion that sent him face first into Derek's spilled lunch tray. Mashed potatoes and gravy decorated his Letterman jacket like abstract art. "What the hell?" Preston's confident smirk faltered. No one at Westbrook had ever seen Madison Harper throw a punch, much less demonstrate professional-level defensive techniques. The watching crowd stirred, phones lifting higher, cameras zooming in. This was no longer going according to script. Madison touched her smartwatch with deliberate precision. Every move is being recorded and live-streamed to secure servers. Assault, extortion, racketeering under the RICO Act. We're looking at minimum 5 years federal time, Preston. Your father's connections won't help you in federal court. The smartwatch on Madison's wrist wasn't available in any consumer store. This was law enforcement-grade technology, capable of capturing 4K video, streaming through encrypted channels, and triggering emergency responses with biometric authentication. The military-grade encryption ensured every second of footage would be admissible in federal court, with GPS timestamps and audio capture that could pick up whispers from 20 feet away. This wasn't just self-defense, it was evidence collection at its finest. "You're bluffing!" But Preston's voice cracked on the second word. His eyes darted to the cameras mounted in the cafeteria corners, the ones everyone knew had been mysteriously offline whenever the Wolves conducted business. "Cut the cameras, now!" "Too late for that!" Madison sidestepped casually as Derek struggled to his feet, still wiping potato from his eyes. 6 months I've been documenting everything. Every payment collected, every threat made, every assault covered up. Your father trained you well, Preston, but he forgot one thing. Federal law doesn't care whose son you are. The cafeteria erupted in whispers. Students who'd suffered under the Wolves' reign began to see something they'd never witnessed before. Preston Kane, the untouchable prince of Westbrook Academy, was sweating. His crew looked to him for guidance, but for the first time in 4 years, he had no smart comeback, no threatening move that would restore order to his kingdom. Preston's face flushed deep red, veins standing out on his neck like rope. "You lying little!" He charged with the explosive power that had won him state championships 3 years running. 220 pounds of muscle and rage, barreling down on someone who weighed half as much. Madison waited until the last possible second. As Preston's hands reached for her throat, she stepped inside his range, rotating her hips while guiding his momentum past her. It was a textbook iriminage, one of Aikido's most elegant throws. She used Preston's own force against him, adding just enough redirection to send him flying over her shoulder. The crash, when Preston hit the floor, was tremendous. Tables jumped. Students screamed. Lunch trays scattered like startled birds. The state champion wrestler lay sprawled on his back, gasping like a fish pulled from water, surrounded by the debris of his own violence. Madison remained calm, not even breathing hard. She touched her watch again, this time pressing a specific sequence. The face lit up, showing an active video call connecting. The cafeteria's scattered conversations died completely as a voice emerged from the tiny speaker, clear and authoritative. "Agent Walker here. Go ahead, Asset 23. Code red at Westbrook Academy Cafeteria," Madison spoke clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Subjects have engaged. Requesting immediate backup." "Copy that, Asset 23. Units are 90 seconds out. Do not engage further unless absolutely necessary. Maintain surveillance positions." The words Asset 23 rippled through the crowd like electricity. Students pressed back against walls, creating more space around the scene. Several teachers who'd been conspicuously absent during the confrontation suddenly appeared at doorways, faces pale with realization. "Asset?" Preston wheezed from the floor, struggling to fill his emptied lungs. "What are you talking about? What is this?" Madison looked down at him with something almost resembling pity. "FBI Youth Protection Program, Preston. I've been undercover at Westbrook for 6 months, documenting your organization's activities. Congratulations, you and your father just graduated from state crimes to federal charges." Derek dropped his phone, the device clattering on the floor. Ryan backed away slowly, hands raised like Madison might strike him down at any moment. The other wolves looked between their fallen leader and the exit doors, calculating whether running would make things better or worse. "You can't. This isn't." Preston managed to push himself up on his elbows. "My father will destroy you. Do you have any idea who you're messing with?" Richard Kane, Chief of Police for the Denver metropolitan area. 15-year veteran, received 3 commendations for service, runs the anti-gang task force, which conveniently never investigates Westbrook Academy. Madison rattled off the facts like reading from a file. Also the owner of 4 offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, where approximately $1.2 million in extorted funds have been deposited over the last 3 years. Your father didn't just know about your operation, Preston. He designed it. The silence that followed was deafening. 500 students and a dozen teachers stood frozen, processing the enormity of what they'd just witnessed. This wasn't just a takedown of the school bully. This was the systematic dismantling of a criminal enterprise that had operated with impunity for years. On Derek's dropped phone, still recording from the floor, a notification popped up from an app called Legal Shield. The AI-powered legal software was automatically analyzing the recorded footage, identifying specific crimes, cataloging faces with facial recognition, and preparing a comprehensive report for law enforcement. Within 30 seconds, every member of the Westbrook Wolves had been identified, their crimes categorized, and evidence packages prepared for prosecution. The future had arrived, and it wore a scholarship student's uniform. The cafeteria doors burst open with practiced precision. Not campus security with their outdated radios and gentle warnings, not teachers with their ineffective threats of detention. 6 FBI agents in tactical gear swept into the room, weapons holstered but hands ready. movements coordinated like a choreographed dance of authority. Agent Walker led the team, his gray eyes taking in the scene with professional assessment. The scattered lunch trays, the recording phones, Preston Kane on the ground, and Madison Harper standing calmly in the center of it all, like the eye of a hurricane she'd created. "Preston Kane!" Agent Walker's voice filled the cafeteria with unquestionable authority. "You're under arrest for violations of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, multiple counts of assault, extortion, and operating a continuing criminal enterprise. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Preston's face drained of color as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The metal was cold, real in a way that his father's threats and promises had never been. Around him, the other wolves stood frozen, calculating their odds. 5 teenagers against 6 federal agents wasn't math that worked in their favor. "My dad!" Preston's voice came out strangled, desperate. "You don't understand. He's the police chief. He'll have your badges. Richard Kane was arrested 20 minutes ago," Agent Walker interrupted, his tone matter of fact, "along with 3 other officers who were facilitating your organization. We've had surveillance on him for months. Every deposit, every cover-up, every time he made evidence disappear. Your father isn't coming to save you, son. He's trying to save himself." The revelation hit the cafeteria like a physical force. Students gasped, teachers stumbled backward, and somewhere in the crowd, someone started crying. The Westbrook Wolves hadn't just been a gang. They'd been a family business, protected at the highest levels of local law enforcement. Madison stepped forward, her movements fluid despite the adrenaline still coursing through her system. "Derek Mills, Ryan Chen, Marcus Brown, Tyler Washington, and Jaden Lopez. You're all named in the federal indictment. You can surrender now and potentially receive reduced sentences for cooperation, or you can make this harder. Your choice." Derek, still wiping potato from his face, was the first to raise his hands. "I want a lawyer. I want to make a deal. I have recordings, man. Preston made us keep recordings of everything as insurance." "Shut your mouth." Preston tried to lunge at Derek, but 2 agents restrained him easily. His wrestler's strength was useless against trained professionals who dealt with genuinely dangerous criminals, not high school bullies playing gangster. Agent Walker nodded to his team. "Process them all. Separate vehicles, separate interrogation rooms, and someone contact the U.S. Attorney's Office. Tell them Operation Yearbook is moving to Phase 2. As agents began reading rights to the other gang members, Madison's watch buzzed with an incoming message. She glanced at it, and for the first time since the confrontation began, her composed expression flickered. "Sir," she addressed Walker quietly, "we have a problem. Surveillance indicates 3 more cells operating at Lincoln High, Roosevelt Academy, and Fairfield Prep. The Westbrook organization was just one tentacle." Walker's jaw tightened. "How many students are we talking about?" "Conservative estimate. 300 victims across the network. Could be more." Madison pulled up data on her phone, showing a web of connections that made several nearby teachers gasp. The Kane family operation extends through their cousins, business associates, even some school board members. Westbrook was our way in, but this is bigger than we initially assessed. Preston, being led toward the exit, turned back with venom in his eyes. "You think you won something? You have no idea what you've started. There are people way scarier than my father involved in this." Madison met his gaze steadily. "We're counting on it. Every threat you make is evidence. Every connection you reveal helps us map the network. so please keep talking." The crowd parted as agents escorted the wolves out. Some students were crying with relief. Others looked shell-shocked, processing the reality that their daily terror was finally ending. A few were already on phones, calling parents, posting on social media, spreading the news that would transform Westbrook Academy forever. Principal Morrison finally appeared, his face ashen, expensive suit wrinkled like he'd been hiding in his office praying this would blow over. "Agent Walker, surely we can handle this internally. The school's reputation is the least of your concerns," Walker cut him off. "We have evidence of administrative complicity. 3 teachers took bribes to look the other way. The vice principal altered attendance records to cover up assault victims' absences. And you, Principal Morrison, accepted $2 million in donations from Richard Kane with full knowledge of where that money originated." Morrison's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Behind him, Mrs. Peterson, the AP literature teacher who'd always seemed so concerned about student welfare, was quietly edging toward the exit. Agent Ramirez stepped into her path. "Patricia Peterson, you're under arrest for conspiracy and failure to report child abuse. You documented 17 separate incidents of assault in your private journal, but never filed a single report." The dominoes continued to fall. Coach Williams, who'd protected star athletes involved with the Wolves. The guidance counselor who'd convinced victims to stay quiet. The security guard who'd conveniently been absent whenever the gang conducted business. One by one, the adults who'd enabled the terror were led away in handcuffs. Madison watched it all with professional detachment, but inside, she felt the weight of 6 months of pretending to be helpless. Every time she'd wanted to fight back, but had to take the abuse to maintain her cover. Every night, she'd gone home with bruises, telling her handler it would be worth it when they brought down the whole network. "You did good work, Harper," Walker said quietly beside her. "The Bureau is impressed. This operation will be studied at Quantico for years." "What happens to the victims? The kids who paid for years, who got hurt, who—" "Full restitution from seized assets, counseling services, and most importantly, they get to come to school without fear." Walker paused, studying her. "You know there are other schools, other operations. The Youth Protection Program needs experienced assets." Madison felt the weight of that offer, more months of pretending to be weak, more bruises and threats, and watching innocent kids suffer while she built cases, but also more Preston Kanes behind bars, more corrupt cops exposed, more victims freed. "Let me graduate first," she said finally. "I'd like to finish 1 year of high school as just a normal student." Walker smiled slightly. "Normal. Right. Because taking down state championship wrestlers with Aikido is totally normal teenage behavior." The cafeteria was slowly returning to life. Students gathered in clusters, sharing stories of what the wolves had done to them. The collective trauma was becoming collective relief. Someone started clapping, then another. Then suddenly, the entire room erupted in applause. Not for violence or revenge, but for justice, delivered through patience, evidence, and the law. Sophia Chen approached tentatively. "That Aikido move, where did you train?" "Colorado Springs. My handler enrolled me in an intensive program." Madison allowed herself a small smile. 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, for 6 months. Turns out the FBI takes asset safety very seriously. Would you teach us? Not to fight, but to defend ourselves?" Madison looked around at the eager faces suddenly surrounding her. The nerds, the artists, the scholarship kids, everyone who'd been prey for too long. I'll talk to Principal Morrison's replacement. Maybe we can start a legitimate self-defense club. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number made her blood run cold. Impressive work, Harper. But Westbrook was just one school. The network runs deeper than you know. Check your email. A friend. Madison opened her secure email to find a single attachment. A map of the United States with dozens of red pins marking schools. Each pin represented another Westbrook, another Preston Kane, another network of corruption and fear. The sender's identity was hidden behind military-grade encryption. She looked up to find Agent Walker watching her. "You got it too?" He nodded grimly. 15 other assets just received the same message. Someone inside the network is either warning us or challenging us. Madison studied the map, her mind already calculating. Dozens of schools meant thousands of victims. It meant a conspiracy that went beyond local corruption into something nationally organized. The yearbook operation had been successful, but it was like removing one infected tooth while ignoring a mouthful of cavities. Around her, Westbrook Academy was transforming. Students walked taller, laughed louder, existed without constantly checking over their shoulders. The reign of terror was over. But Madison knew this victory was just the beginning. She closed the email and looked at the security camera in the corner. Not the school's camera, but another one. Nearly invisible, that she'd noticed during the fight. Someone had been watching. Someone who knew about assets and operations and had access to FBI intelligence. A movement in the crowd caught her eye. A student she didn't recognize, wearing a Westbrook uniform, but no one seemed to know them. They made eye contact for a split second, and Madison saw her own reflection. Another asset, another school, another operation already in progress. The stranger touched their watch, the same model as Madison's, then melted back into the crowd heading for the exits. By the time Madison pushed through to follow, they were gone. Only a small note remained, tucked where they'd been standing. Every school has its predators. We're the new evolution of prey. Madison pocketed the note, her mind racing. The network knew about the FBI program. They were adapting, evolving, spreading their warning. But so was she. So were all the assets in all the schools, building cases, collecting evidence, waiting for their moment to strike. As the last police car pulled away with Preston Kane in the back, Madison Harper stood in the emptying cafeteria and made a decision. She'd wanted normal, but normal was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not while predators stalked school hallways, not while corruption protected abusers, not while kids somewhere else were paying protection money and living in fear. She touched her watch, activating a secure channel. Asset 23 to control. Operation Yearbook is complete. Requesting immediate assignment to the next target. Copy that, 23. Welcome to the deep end. Briefing packet incoming. Madison walked out of Westbrook Academy's cafeteria, leaving behind her cover identity as the helpless scholarship girl. Somewhere in another state, another Preston Kane was counting money and terrorizing classmates. They had no idea what was coming. Every school has its predators. But now, they also had their hunters.